Welcome to the Teaching Our Kids podcast, a place for teachers, parents, and everyone in between to learn about how kids learn. Good morning, Becky.
Hi, Ashton.
Today we're going to be talking about screen time, which is pretty controversial these days. Way more than when we were kids, anyway.
Yeah, when we were kids, it was like watch TV was just one of the activities we did. Play outside or watch TV.
Right, that's pretty much it. There was a lot less computers and phones and tablets and smartwatches, and I'm just trying to think of what else they got these days. Everything.
All the things.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. So let's see. What did I look up here to start us with? The first thing I want to talk about, it's in these messages. I'm going to click into it for us here, and hopefully my screen will keep recording. But this first one is, if you can't see it, you probably can't, Becky, but I'll tell you. It says screen time by age, and it's from Brain Balance Achievement Centers. And it says 29% of babies watch an average of 1.5 hours a day. It says, this is, I don't know what I need to look up the statistics where they pulled this from. But then it goes up and it says age 1 to 2, it's 64% of toddlers watch just over 2 hours a day. Then we have age 2 to 5, which is children watch as much as 4 hours per day. And the crazy one, teens, age 8 to 18.
That's a broad range.
I know, but it says they consume an average of 7 hours per day.
That reminds me of what my screen time tells me on my phone at the end of the week.
Oh, yeah. It's not like how much you have used. That always makes me cry.
Yeah. There are categories for adults.
There wasn't on that infographic. I just found it interesting because it wasn't saying a recommendation. It was kind of a study of what the average is. And like 7 hours a day for my kids, because my youngest just turned 8. So both my kids are in that top group. And I'm not going to lie, especially in the summer, they definitely get 7 hours of screen time a day.
Right.
I mean, maybe not every day. I have days where I work really hard to make it not. But,
right.
Yeah.
I
don't like it.
That the young one, the baby one, and the toddler one. I mean, baby one to me is difficult. I mean, and this is like totally judgment free.
Yeah.
Certainly, just a difference in approaches, right? But I can't even understand how a child, a human that young, would consume that much.
Right. Well, half the time they're not. They're just kind of getting it as a bystander, I think.
Right, but still, that blows my mind.
Yeah.
Blows my mind because like I can't comprehend that. Like when you have a tiny little newborn, you don't even have time to watch television. You're changing a diaper, nursing, or wrestling with the baby to go to sleep most of the time, and then in between all of that, like doing the 82 loads of laundry. So I guess if you keep the TV on in the background, maybe, I know some people do that. My parents used to just have the TV on constant. So maybe that's how, but otherwise, like, I just don't get it.
I don't think it's meant, I don't know. I have to look up where they got those numbers, but I can't imagine it's like specifically focused TV time for a baby. I mean, it's like you just said, there's so much other stuff going on. But I thought that was interesting, because usually like everyone tells you like, here's what's recommended. But I just feel like there's less statistics and studies on like what actually is, because it's definitely a lot. And our world is like morphing into this. Like people are just, technology and screens are way more than anything these days. Like, I don't.
Well, I think that the quality of what's on the screen definitely matters in this, because there's a huge difference in putting your 2 to 5 year old in front of a TV, in my opinion, for hours on end,
Mm-hmm.
um, just with some nonsense on, versus having them doing interactive, like on the iPad, you
Right.
can like their learning activities where they can start to use like their dexterity to touch and identify color
Mm-hmm.
numbers and I mean, not to say that's the only learning that they should be doing, but I think that that's a lot different than just sitting and staring at a show all day.
Right.
While
I
they
agree.
show too, there's a lot of like sedentary that goes on behavior
Right.
that with a show watching versus activity.
This reminds me, I forget the name of the book. I'm gonna have to go find it. But I read this one book and they talked about um, the awakening of educational TV, like how it started. Like I think Sesame Street was the like originator of trying to teach kids stuff with TV because they realized how much kids are watching TV, and they're like, let's make this educational. So like start with Sesame Street, then we got like Blue's Clues, and I think that's wild that how it has morphed into now we got people watch things like Blippy and I don't even know what else is on YouTube these days like that, but it's wild. But you're right. The we definitely are going to talk a little bit about that. The quality versus quantity, and what they're doing and what they're learning. So let me look at that other screenshot real quick.
And I want to
Yeah,
say one
go ahead.
thing. I you were kind of harping on the fact that you liked that statistic was giving us the reality of what's
Mm-hmm.
happening in screen time, right? I think that's important to know because a lot of times we go to the pediatrician with our kids and they're going to ask you, and it's like kind of when you go to your own doctor's appointment, they're
It's
like,
almost
how much
like
wine do you drink in a week? And you're like,
right. It's like a shaming thing too.
yeah,
Like I feel so bad for this, but like it's not. It's more than you think. You're not, the only
right.
one letting your 8-year-old be on there for 7 hours a day.
Don't have work to do.
Yeah.
How like let it be known that you are not alone in your child's screen time
Hmm.
exposure.
Yeah. And in this world, like we're not all out working on the farm. We can't all have our kids working next to us. Like you can't do it. I mean, we're working on the computer, so it goes to be that they would also be on a computer or a screen or something, I don't know,
Right.
like so it's wild. It's like the evolution of man here. Uh, anyway, so let me look this other one I have real quick. So this one is the recommendations, and this comes from a American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry from 2002. Um, it
From
has
child psychiatry. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, not
I
like
know.
the Association of Pediatrics.
Right. So it's recommendations by age. It has babies 0 to 18 months, none, except video chat with an adult, it says.
Yeah.
Then it has toddlers 18 to 24 months, less than an hour, co watching educational programs with a caregiver. We have children 2 to 5 years. It has 0 to 3 hours, 1 hour or less each weekday, and up to 3 hours on the weekend day. Then we have kids and teens 6 to 17 years. It says 2 hours. Compare that to the 7 hours that the other one said.
Right.
It says aim for 2 hours or less of recreational screen time. Focus on maintaining healthy limits and making time for other important activities like physical activity and sleep.
Can we define screen time real quick?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I think it's important, like, to
Yeah.
understand that it's not just about measuring the time that your child is like watching a show,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's not the only important factor here. Like one, sitting and being sedentary and having your eyes looking at a screen is
Right.
really what it defines. So
Yes.
I get shocked by my screen time number, because I always immediately assume that means that that's how long I've been on like my social media accounts.
Uh-huh.
That's not the case. It's any time that I'm looking at the screen, meaning like if I'm in my note app typing my grocery
Right.
list, if I'm shooting a text message to my husband, if I'm reading an article online, if I'm
Mhm.
calculator, if I am watching social media or watching a show. So all of that is encompassed by screen time, right?
Mhm. It could even be like reading a book on your Kindle. Like,
Right.
so
So while we think immediately that screen time is like a negative, like we would think it's like being lazy and sitting and watching like, some very enjoyable thing, it's just exposing yourself, your eyes to a screen, no matter
mhm.
the activity.
Right. We're doing it right now. Yeah, for sure. And let me go back real quick to that last one. Thank you for defining that. That was good. The last one on there on the recommendations by age, it has teens and adults 18 and up is 2 to 4 hours of recreational use per weekday, taking frequent breaks and setting up screen free times to make room for physical activity.
Yeah.
So,
They really focus
um,
on that physical activity piece, don't they?
yeah, on that psychiatric study or whatever. But I just thought that was interesting, and I wanted to, there's so many. Those are just two infographics I found. And anybody can make those. I can make one
Right. Like,
and share it. And I don't, I'm not a doctor,
right.
so, um, but I think they're, just interesting numbers to look at and consider when we're talking about this. So I wanted to share some of them. Um,
One thing that I
yeah.
found, I think it was probably the biggest thing that stood out when I was just doing a little bit of Googling around this subject was, the exposure or the screen time that you and your children are exposed to is really, really correlates. The higher the number, the higher correlation to depression.
Oh yeah, I could.
And I think that likely it's interesting to see how this psychiatric association is really pushing for recreational use. That's their suggestion, making intentionally finding time to
Mhm.
be physical and up and moving your body. And we there's a lot of data that shows that physical behavior, right, like getting up and moving your body, physical exercise, really helps decrease depression.
Right.
So it's funny how those two things are
Go
so
together.
right, and you can't really be physical unless you're like watching a screen to do a workout.
Right. And it's also to be said with what you were mentioning earlier about the quality of what you're choosing to use it for. Like, are you using it to learn something new? Or are you using it just to like drone away into, zone out? Are
Think
you using to interact with someone? Like, are you chatting with your friends and, building a relationship with somebody while you're doing it? Or are you just, you know, staring at a video of, I can't think of an example, but like the quality also definitely, and they didn't necessarily say that in that little infographic. Well, recreational, I guess.
I think that recreational use all too often. I find myself doing it all the time. It's just used as a vice. It's
Mm-hmm.
for
Like a
adults.
distraction, or like to use it to procrastinate or to um, just zone, like, relax, or this
Yeah,
is my downtime. I'm just going to sit here and stare at my phone. Yeah.
which is you know for me as a homeschooling mom, I have to. I'm not. I need to be better about it. But it's a lesson that I give my kids. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Downtime equals electronic device.
Right. And they're watching you, man. That's
Right.
crazy.
They watch me do that, and that's just teaching them through
Mm-hmm.
my behavior. And my oldest is definitely relies now on a screen to unwind and to
Mm-hmm.
distract his mind because he's a very busy minded child. And that it's now a really difficult habit to get out of. Uh,
Yes.
if I suggest doing something, he'll be like, "Mom, I'm just so tired. Can I sit down and watch some
Mm-hmm.
TV?" like, dude, you've been on the screen all morning. Could we
Right.
maybe like sit together and play chess, or could we sit and like draw a picture? Can we find another sedentary activity that
Right.
allows us to focus our attention and not be distracted and help us relax? And it's really difficult now.
And it's hard because we are so wired to use it for us to do that, because it's always like, especially with the phone, you just always have it, so you can always just like pull it out. You don't have to get like,
Yeah.
just
Well,
it's
like this
tough.
piece of, they don't necessarily know what I'm doing on my phone.
Right.
For example, I might be signing you up for baseball, trying to put in all my information.
Uh-huh.
Meanwhile, you're like, "What are you doing, mom?" And it's not that just because you see me on my phone, you think
Right.
that I'm enjoying a screen. However, I'm taking care
Working.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, working, financial responsibilities, answering emails.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of difficult to teach that, if they don't know what's going on.
Right.
But it's really important that we're at least aware of it as adults who have children.
I know I had to, for Instagram, I was so addicted. I have a 30-minute timer set on it.
Mm.
So that's all I get a day. It
Good.
shuts off. It's hard.
I, I bet. I don't even want to look at my Instagram time.
I hated it. I was like, "Oh my God, I spent this much time on here. I've got to not do this." And I took Facebook off my phone. I only get that on my computer now. Like, that's how I try and solve that for myself.
So how are you doing that? How are you managing a 30-minute time limit when you are also running your blog? Like, because that comes with
I
a lot.
got to get it done, or I can go, like, if I need to do something for work for it, I get on my computer and do it.
Oh, okay. So the recreational use is on your phone,
Yes.
work use, business. Oh, that's a good way of.
That's why yeah.
Oh, that's
Because it's so much easier with my phone. I could be sitting anywhere and get on it. And whereas, I'm purposeful when I get on the computer.
intentional.
Yes, intentional.
And
So before because we could keep going and going, but I want to bring it in. I want to talk a little bit about school and screen time. Um, like, with what my kids do at school, that is screens. They do have, like, in the classrooms, they have big screens, like whiteboard screens with projectors, so the teachers can do a lot of like learning things on there, like
yeah.
learning educational videos, and like instead of a chalkboard now, they can go and write on there and type, and it's pretty awesome. I used it a little bit.
Projectors anymore, like with
It's
the
It's like basically they have giant computers in the classroom that have like touch screens.
that's so cool.
It's very cool. So they use those. Also, my kids' school in Hartford County, especially since COVID, at their elementary school, everybody has a Chromebook. They have their own little Chromebook laptop. And they use them for some lessons. A lot of times they get used for like the state testing.
Mm.
They sit on those and do that. It's very guided. The class does it together. They've also, like, Harry, as he gets older, he does more on there. They were teaching him how to use Canva, which he was all excited about.
Ooh,
Like, so he knows how to do PowerPoints, and he types like his reports on there now, which is very, that's what the life is. It's not written anymore. It's all in there. So it's cool. I mean, that was fourth grade. He's going in fifth grade. So he's already knows, he's pretty literate in a lot of computer skills, which is awesome. Also, I haven't. I remember from during COVID when they would do their media library class, her teaching internet safety. Like, it's
mm,
not okay to share your name and your address, and like what you can share online, what you can't share online, and that kind of stuff. I feel like they also taught like screen time limits. Like, it was like a lesson or two about it that they did, which they
right.
probably do every year for every grade, just as they repeat it, which is kind of cool. A little boost for us parents.
I said that's, it's just like that layered approach
Right.
where they're hearing the message from someone, the same message from
Mhm.
someone else, another adult figure.
So that's all, that's basically like technology and screen time stuff in school. They are, I took a while looking up about phone usage being allowed in school, like kids being able to take their phone to school, because that's the one thing, especially it's elementary school, it's kind of crazy
Yeah.
because my kids both, I will have a third grader and a fifth grader this year. So last year was second and fourth. Both of them had friends in school who had phones,
Yeah.
taking them to school in their backpack. Now they're allowed to have them at school if they're like off in their backpack. But then they get on the bus, and that is like completely unmonitored. Kids are watching TikTok on the bus. They're doing all kind. It's kind of crazy.
I'm not ready. Nope, not ready for it.
So that is pretty wild. And then a lot of parents have way less care. Like their kids do all kinds of stuff on the phone, and I'm like, this is like, I don't know. It's just wild. It's like the Wild West.
Right.
So that part is extreme for me. My kids are like, we're kind of like, I have talked to you a little bit about this before. We're getting into the want of it. And at first I was like, no, I didn't have one until high school. I don't want them to have one until high school. I don't, for the phone. But I feel like it's such in a part of our world now. They have to, like, the same way about learning that computer literacy with school and the academics of it. They're going to have to learn phone literacy, or like how to use the phone and the proper way and using it moderately. And if I keep keeping it away as a, you're not old enough for this, I don't want this, I don't, like, then they're not going to learn. Like, I want them to learn it now when they're still impressionable, and not when they're, going and learning on their own and less under my wing. So we're
Right.
going to start working on that. Yeah, because so that was another thing. Oh, before I go down that phone train, because I got more on that. But another thing is our screen time during the school. Like right now, it's summer. I let them go a little crazy. But during the
Mm-hmm.
school year, during the week, there's no computer games and no video games. We do have like family TV time in the evening where
Yeah.
we watch, a show together most days if they're not outside running or whatever. But during the school year, during the week, they have homework, and then they can play outside or read or whatever. Or we have a TV show that we watch together. But during the weekend, I let them, play more because my kids both have their own PCs, which is crazy. And we have an Xbox One and a Switch, Nintendo Switch. So it's easier for me to monitor their screen time during the school year because it's just like regulated. But Harry tells me, he's like, my friends play video games before school, after school, all night. I'm like, well, I'm not your friend's mom. I'm your mom.
I've heard
So
times.
yeah, so that's pretty wild. What else? So yeah, just moderation. We're heavy on it during the school year, more heavy than I am during the summer.
We do a lot a similar approach where the weekdays we seldomly allow it
Mm-hmm.
unless we have if we have like a really crazy hectic day. Say we had a really, because we're on our feet moving a lot, right? We're not in the
Mm-hmm.
classroom sitting down a lot, so we might have like a big field trip the day before, or
Right.
a day with like the pool, and then we come back home and they're super active, and the next day they're dead. I may allow a little bit of screen time in the morning, just while everybody's kind of vegging out a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
or we get up and start moving. But we generally do not allow for it. However, that is in regards to like recreational use.
Right.
Now, we get some time during the week if they decide that they want to do like, um,
For their learning time.
right, for learning time, if they can give me a reason that they need the device and tell me what they want to do, if they're working on their reading, writing,
Mm-hmm.
arithmetic. Also, we do a lot of tutorial videos, which I think is important that they
Mm-hmm.
are able to be in a scenario where they can teach themselves and not
Right.
learn from me. So right now we are huge into yo-yos, and so we're watching yo-yo tutorial videos. We're winding, stopping, practicing.
Love YouTube, man.
Yeah.
It's just magical world.
I mean, I kind of hate YouTube, and I told my
I
kids they don't want it anymore, and we
I
turn
know.
ads except for when I'm around and they're doing a tutorial video.
I agree. It's a love-hate relationship.
But then on the weekends, we also do allow like morning time. And then um, we generally, depending on the day, more so on the weekdays, if we don't have like sports in the evening, we're doing family TV show
Mhm.
for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But I hate it because it's right before bed. And the whole purpose of like, or the whole talk behind the screen time conversation, at least a lot of it, is blue
Mhm.
exposure. And blue light
Yes.
exposure has a huge effect on your sleep, especially
Mhm.
30 minutes before bed. So, like, that's probably not the best practice. We should be turning the screen off like 30 minutes before we want them to get upstairs.
Uh-huh.
But it's what works right now. So,
Usually we spend about 30 minutes upstairs. So, like
hmm,
reading, or they like to like that's usually when I put laundry away. I know that's weird, but while they're getting ready for bed is usually like
yeah, me
and
too.
they just dance around. But also that blue light thing, my kids, we were at the Dollar Tree the other day and they had blue light glasses. And they're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, can we get these?" I was like, "They're $1. Go ahead."
Right.
So I don't know what that will do for us, but we're like testing those out right now in my house. So it's funny that you mentioned that.
Yeah,
The
that's
blue
what I.
light glasses.
But I don't wear them all the time. I mean,
No.
should for as much as my screen time is.
Yeah. Well, and they're both in there on their PCs playing Minecraft mostly. I mean, Harry has other games, but they play a lot of Minecraft. And
Yeah,
Lily is loving wearing them. I'm like, all right, girl,
go
protect
for it.
your eyes. All right. So, yes. So let's see. I read this on Forbes.com. It said screen time, particularly social media, stresses our brains, specifically the engine of computation and mental functioning, or the prefrontal cortex.
There's that word again.
Uh-huh. So screen time is a stressor on that. It can cause sleep and eye strain, and problem solving development issues and social skill trouble. Like there's so many things
Yeah.
negative. That's all like the negatives. We've talked some about like, learning and
Well, if we're not
but
using it at school and if we're talking about it for recreational use, I think
mhm.
one of the big subjects that we have to touch on is like online bullying, the
Oh
depression,
yes.
what the image your children are getting, or standards for like beauty or anything that could negatively affect them is likely going to come from an uncontrolled environment where
Mhm.
they, like the world is their oyster, right? Like they can get
Yeah.
anything from online. There's a lack of tone that is suggested when they're communicating with their friends. You don't know who you're talking to. Anything can be said. And then when you go into social media, people are only majority of the time. I mean, I think it's trending in the way of being more realistic, but for the most part, people are only posting the good stuff about their life. So
Mhm.
we're allowing our kids to have social media accounts. Like they need to understand, and this is kind of hard for them, that the image that is portrayed to them is not one that is like necessarily the whole story, right?
Right.
So this person doesn't have a picture perfect life. They're just telling you, they're just showing you what they
Mhm.
want you to see because they
Yes.
see what they look like in the morning before they put
Yes.
makeup on. um that's and that at such a young age, even in your teen years or high school years. I would argue maybe even more so in your high school years when things are very competitive in traditional schools. Like you're coming up with your self image and comparing yourself to other people, that can have
It's
huge
it's
negative
a
on kids socially and
I
independently.
I agree, which is another reason to like moderate, do it purposefully and with moderation and with the guidance. Like some
Mhm.
people just give it to their kids and they're like, okay. use this and expect them to kind of use it like an adult would use it and have that prefrontal cortex development to wade their way through these things. And you got to kind of guide them and
I
teach
think
them. And
being educated about childhood development, emotional development, and if you don't even know that that's a thing, it's hard
mm-hmm.
to help your child work through it, right? Like
Right.
adults are not really emotionally mature anyway. So if you're not even aware of the impact that these decisions have, then how could you
Right.
make good decisions?
Well, and even for us, like our usage, we don't even like it's I feel like it's just changed it changes even our as adults and what we got going on. So,
Oh,
um
I won't be I certainly will not um, say that my self image hasn't been affected via,
yeah.
what I see my high school friends doing. And I forget to tell myself, like, of course she's got her pretty pictures on
uh
her girl behaved on, I'm not seeing when she's at Target and, the baby's got having a temper tantrum and the 8-year
right.
old like stomping their feet asking for Pokemon. Um, it's definitely
Everybody's got troubles. Oh, yeah. Um on that note, I want to switch a little to what I was talking about earlier about the phones because I did a little bit of research because I am gonna be getting into that soon with my fifth grader probably, um, and I looked up some parental controls. I looked up the best paid one that I saw was called Bark.
I think
Um,
about that.
you've heard about that one?
Yeah, I think
It's It can connect to 30 plus platforms to monitor text messages, emails, social activity for signs of harmful interactions and content. So you can connect it to like all kinds of apps and your kid's computer, their phone, their tablet, you know, and it is $14 a month for 14 a month for 5 months. I think that is. I don't know. It had different plans, 14 a month or $5 a month, depending on how long you paid for it. That's it. My notes are scratched. And you get like a 7-day free trial. So I thought that was interesting. And then Google has Family Link, which is free. And that just helps you to understand what the kids are doing, shares their location, manages their privacy, and has a timer and stuff like that too. It does a lot
right.
of the same, but it's through Google. Um, has screen time limits, age appropriate content guides, that kind of stuff. I kind of like how it even has like can show you your kid's location and how much battery is left on their phone. So if their phone's dying, but you see
Oh,
where
I
they
love
are, you can be like, "Hey, your phone's gonna die."
right.
I thought that was interesting. And that I think both of them can be on Android or iPhone. And then I was looking up iPhone has its own little parental controls too in their but I don't have an iPhone so I don't know much about
Mm.
that. Um
Yeah, so I poorly set up our kids' iPads when we first got them. We couldn't figure out for some reason the setup wasn't working and they were set up under Eric's Apple account.
mhm
But we just had to get Callan a new iPad and set it up properly.
mhm
And I'm enjoying it. I've got it set up to like use hours and he has to ask for permission outside of those hours. He has to ask
mhm
for permission to download any apps that are outside of the regulations that I've
mhm
set. Um, I get like a report of who he's talked to in his
mhm.
messenger app. Um,
You get a
I
screen time report too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see it all. I don't think I might be wrong on this because, again, my kids don't have phones. They have very limited access to
Mhm.
their iPads. So I'm not heavy on the review of all of this
Right.
because it's not as, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. But I don't know if there's like the battery, if you can see
Life.
charge they have yet. And there's probably a bunch more
features.
features on the app that you're talking about. The review kind of that Apple offers gives you, but
yeah,
for the purpose that I need it for, it's working great.
It's working for, yeah. And our kids are still pretty young. Like the other thing, like my kids on the PC, Andy has all that set up and he gets alerts. Like they're not allowed to download anything.
Right.
They can get on YouTube, but they're set to YouTube Kids and it's set for their age. So it like filters out, which YouTube is still kind of sketchy with that. Love you, YouTube, but you are. Well,
yeah, my kids
it's hard
off of it just because their language started changing and they were talking about money and started talking about like just saying bro, and I was like, what are you even watching? Like it's not even, it's like we're
crazy.
doing a contest for $10,000. This is what?
Oh, they were watching Mr. Beast.
Yeah, like all sorts of
man,
super rich YouTubers, and this is likely how we got interested in cars, which is like a cool interest to have now. That we're exploring. However, I didn't like where it was going.
Right.
So.
Well, and that's one of those things. So good for you for monitoring and knowing, because some people don't even pay attention to what their kids are watching on there. It's crazy.
Eric I have to give my husband the credit on that one. He was like, "What's happening to our children?" I was like, I don't know. That's a good point.
Okay. The other thing is my kids are on there playing games, and like Minecraft, you can even play online with people. You could do it with people you know, like, and Harry plays some games like that. And we have it set up right now that they can't play with anybody that they don't know. Like they can, I think they get sent messages, but usually Andy goes and filters all that out. Like they go through him. So he's like, who are these people? Like, bye. Right. And then, they have a couple friends that we've hooked them up together so they can play together. And we know who they are. But it's very monitored, I guess.
What about Roblox?
We never got into Roblox. I don't know. Okay. I know a lot of people do that.
Roblox, but the way that I see it is it's kind of like social media with games. Where they have, like, they can hop onto this server where other people are playing, right? So they can see, like, their username above. And there's a whole bunch of, like, characters running around, and I think there's a chat. However, like, at my children's age right now, they don't do a lot of the chat. If they see their friends running around, they may try and, like,
run next to them.
or go kill their friend.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, I think it can get sketchy because it's definitely like
anybody can get on there.
Games just be created, and who knows what these games are actually
portraying.
They're learning through this. So we definitely keep an eye on Roblox because it's a little less savory than like a Minecraft.
But even Minecraft could still be that same way. But yeah, there are some games
if they're playing if they're playing with other people. My kids are not.
Yeah.
Yeah. This whole subject is just so overwhelming to think of.
It is. It's a lot. That's why this is going to be a longer one, but I think we covered mostly everything. I talked about the couple apps, talked about Unschool and kind of what you do to monitor it, what I do to monitor it. Just keeping those guidelines and guiding them and helping them be purposeful.
One thing we haven't touched on.
Yeah.
I talk about this because I think it's important. Meltdowns.
Oh gosh. Yeah, like technology, like after they've been on it and they're like,
or the to it when when it's not time for it. That's one reason that we wind up taking like electronic breaks. We call it in our house. We don't say.
I call it the detox. Video game detox.
Yeah, it's like you have those summer months or like a few weeks where you get extra like gracious, right? You're like, just take it all, have all the time. They turn into
monsters. Yes.
And it's like when you feed them too much sugar and they're like, wake up asking for candy in the morning. that I struggle with that personally. It makes me furious, but I've only done it to myself, I think.
Yeah.
Um, so we definitely try and do a couple of electronic breaks where we don't do anything in the house. Like, it's electronic free week.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's definitely some research around that, and how screens can become so addicting, and affect children in the way where that's what they're searching for. Like I said about Tegan, he needs it now as his wind down time, and it's hard for him to wind down when he's totally overstimulated with
Mm-hmm.
else, and that becomes a meltdown moment for him, because he's looking for his outlet, and because he's not practiced in that area, he feels like
Mine
he's gonna explode.
Mine even, like, if they're doing it around meal times, I have to make them stop. Like, they'll just be hungry and keep going. And I'm like,
Yep.
y'all need to stop and eat. Like,
Uh-huh.
this is this is not
Yep.
healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, and we do a lot of so one of the things is I have timers. I try not to be like, that's it, you're off now. I give them warnings and timers, and they know, okay, 5 more minutes, 2 more minutes. I even have my one sister-in-law, she was saying how they put him in charge of the timer.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to start the timer for himself, which I think is might need to do that for mine,
Yeah.
because they might be more, then it's in there, they're responsible for it instead of you still
I mean,
pushing
I
it
love
on
the
them.
fact that he's responsible for it. I set the timer for my kids, and then I tell them when it goes off, turn the timer off, turn your electronics off. And I was upstairs the other day, and I'm like, wait, it's been 15 minutes longer than it. I know.
Mhm.
I didn't hear the timer. And I'm hollered out. I'm like, did your timer go off? He's like, yeah, I turned it off. I'm like, why is the TV still on, dude?
Mhm. Oh yeah, so that happens too. Yeah. Or like, I didn't hear you. I'm like, oh,
Not today.
okay. Mine also have like the one thing in the morning, I'm like, you have to eat breakfast before you get on there. Because on the weekends, when I want to sleep sometimes, I'm like, okay, you can get on in the morning and
Right.
let me sleep. But you have to eat.
Eat
Like,
food.
you're going, especially my girl. Harry is not even a breakfast eater, even when he's not getting on, really.
Mm-hmm.
He's weird like that. But Lily needs to eat, or it's not good. But and then they have chores. Like, I don't have, this is a whole nother topic, but I don't really have like a set chore they have to do every day. But there's certain things that I ask them to do, and I'm like, you're on the team, you got to do this, and I'm like, you got to do the dishwasher before you know
Right.
get sucked in. So there's that too. Um, but yeah, the meltdowns are a thing,
Yeah.
especially when
That,
they've had it so much and they're like just addicted to it. It's
mhm. I think one reason why the screen time exposure, like monitoring it, is so necessary. But then the other thing that I wanted to put in around that is, I brought this up to you the other day at Lily's party, and I really liked it. It was a PhD who's most studied in screen time exposure and childhood development. She's on TikTok. She's great. I can't remember her name right now. Maybe I'll look it up and send it to you so you can link it here
mm-hmm,
in the notes. But ultimately, she said that, like, the connection with your child is most important,
mm-hmm,
right? So the connection that you have with your kiddo is what matters most. So if you are using electronics as a way to escape your child and, like, being a parent, that is going to affect the connection that you have
mm-hmm.
with your kid. While, like, that has to happen at times to keep us sane, right? Like, you need the
Right.
15-minute break. If they understand that when things get hectic, you, like, just go on the device, that's, you're missing out on opportunities to
Mm-hmm.
also really teaching them poor management skills of stressful situations.
Right. Just go use that to escape it. Yeah.
Right, where, like, getting vulnerable, using techniques to keep your temper
Mm-hmm.
managed through a difficult situation, Like all of that builds connection with your kiddo and builds their emotional skills, right? Their emotional intelligence, their emotion, like their toolbox to manage their emotion. And that this is again said without judgment, but it's just something that to really think about when you're kind of analyzing your choices around screen time. Is there an opportunity here to connect with your kiddo? Because if someone asked me, are you going to choose connecting with your kiddo over like giving them electronics? Like, it's going to be connection with my kid every time. But also keeping in mind that like there are times where, you know, we're just surviving.
Yes.
So like everyone's surviving is different in their house, and everyone's decision around screen time is different in their house. So long as you're being intentional around it, I think that's what matters.
I agree. Awesome. Thank you, Becky. This is great.